Very excited today to sit with Mr. Joe Harper, who is the grandson of Cecil B. DeMille, who's known as the founding father of American cinema and the most successful producer-director in film history. From a family of larger-than-life characters, Joe Harper's specialty is growing, thriving roots. From his 60-plus year marriage to Barbara, to his revolutionary relationship with the world of horse racing, to the branching out and expansion of the historic Delmar Thoroughbred Club. And he sits with me today to talk about some of the things that have happened to him and what it's like to grow up in Hollywood royalty. Thank you, Mr. Joe Harper, for making this happen.
Are you kidding?
It was a great honor and a whole lot of fun to be at the Oscars with you as your guest and your family.
I have never had as much fun at all the Oscars, and I've probably been to 20 of them. That was the best night of any Oscar night, was having you there. It really was terrific.
Received that wholeheartedly. Everybody was like, oh my God. And I was so nervous because of course it's like the biggest night, you know, in Hollywood and show business in, you know, obviously in the world. And I don't usually get nervous, but I was like nervous because I was like, I didn't know what to expect. And one of the most beautiful things was how at ease and so down to earth, not only you and the way you received me and received everybody around you, but your family as well. And so it made like what was potentially the most, you know, anxiety-ridden night just so relaxing.
It was
and
fun.
Yeah. So I just want to say thank you for that. And what was really noteworthy for me, because you come from such a larger-than-life background, right? And when we were there at the Oscars and we got a chance to talk, and you were telling me, you know, I said, you know, I'm just fascinated with the Ten Commandments. It affected me greatly. It was one of the biggest influences on the world, and I think it's like considered still top 5 movies of all time. And your grandfather is responsible, basically, for Hollywood.
Yeah, it was. He got there first, I think. You know, the first picture ever made in Hollywood. I think he did it. Yeah.
I mean, as exciting as the Oscars were, I was just really captivated by the stories and the perspective that somebody like you would have. I just had to get this man on camera to talk about the stories that only you would have, you know? So I would love to hear from you about the experience of being on the ship with your grandfather and that whole impression and the memories you have of that.
It was an interesting thing because, you know, for the months, so we always had dinner together, and my mother, father, and grandfather. And we always talked about what was coming up. I sat there. If I didn't say anything, I could sit there and absorb. And so you know, it was time to start shooting the Ten Commandments. For some reason, we took a ship. You know, I mean, okay, it was 1953 or so, or somewhere in there. And it's weird because my grandfather, my mother, and my father were all pilots at one stage of their careers. Yeah,
really, back
in the teens and the 20s. And so they didn't want to get on an airplane.
Right.
So we took the train to New York and got on a ship. We went to Italy first, and then another ship, and we landed in Alexandria, Egypt.
Wow.
And it was amazing because all of Egypt was out there to greet us, and big signs and bands. Welcome to Egypt, Cecil B. DeMille.
Wow.
That kind of blew me away. But it was a great experience, not just the trip and all that, but being there, being in Egypt, the culture, the change, the difference. It just, you know, got thrown in my brain every day at 11 years old, and it had an impact, I'll tell you.
Yeah, I'll bet. And how long were you there shooting?
Yeah, shooting actually on location in Cairo was, outside of Cairo, was a couple of months.
Okay.
There were about 3 different locations that they used. One where the Ramesses Palace was used, and they built that out there in the desert. And there was another one where they're coming out of the Red Sea, which was actually, you know, not shot at the Red Sea.
Right.
But and then there was a Mount Sinai. That was the story of Moses going up Mount Sinai. That was actually Charlton Heston going up Mount Sinai. So,
wow.
Yeah, that was cool.
Did you have a context for what was happening around you? Because, you know, obviously you're a young boy, but did you sort of go, well, this is an unusual life?
It started unusual. My mother was an amazing woman, and she ran his life, really, his private life. She ran a lot of the production company, Motion Picture Associates. Very, very intelligent. She was kind of like, my parents were shifted. You know, if you fell down and hurt your knee, you didn't go to mom, you went to dad. But she was an amazing woman, and I loved her dearly, and she loved me. But she was a hard woman to love. I mean, to get into. It wasn't a lot of hugging and all going on.
Yeah.
There was just a lot of fascination with her intelligence and how she handled herself, and the company and her father. And grandfather always said that she reminded him so much of himself. It was like having a twin.
Amazing.
And so
she also took over for him when he had a heart attack.
She did, yeah. She was always within reach. She protected him and the company, and also I think stayed out of the creative side. Obviously that was his deal, but
Right.
But he looked to her for quite a bit of advice.
It says so much because you're surrounded by women,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
you have a very beautiful marriage of 60 plus years, and
4 amazing daughters.
four
and yeah.
amazing daughters that I got to meet, and I could see such a golden thread of grace in the family. I mean, sisters are sisters. I'm sure I'm one of 3. So you know that there's always that dynamic, but what was so palpable being with you all was this sense of, respect for one another and a real deep-rooted family feeling, which was really, it was an honor to be around. And it was just also funny to watch you with all of those women.
Yeah.
And just the fun that you have with them. And, I wondered how that affected the way you see the world and the way you see business and how you enter the world with that.
Well, I think from day one with my mother, and I was very used to having dominant women around me, and realized that, hey, I'm lucky to be here.
I'll be quiet.
Yeah, I'll be real quiet. But and they're all terrific. I mean, I really say that because my wife Barbara has had the most influence in raising my daughters. Fortunately, she brought them up quite a bit like herself. And
What is she like?
she's terrific. I mean, it's hard to describe her because the first day we met, it was the day after my 15th birthday. She was 14, and she was born and raised in New York City. And she had to come out to Tucson, Arizona, where I was going to prep school, because her mother was ill and needed a dry climate. So at 15 years old, I hopped on my pony and I came charging up to the car she was sitting in and made my horse rear up a little bit.
Of course you did.
And
Of course you
said,
did.
"Hi, I'm Joe Harper." And she just looked at me and went, "Well, don't hold it against me, pal." And I said, "Oh, this is going to be interesting."
Oh.
And so it was from then on, that was March of '58. And
That's beautiful.
here we are, it's still going strong, and every day is a new day with Barbara Harper, I can tell you that.
And as you're saying that, I think it probably has an extreme effect on how you, I don't want to use the word govern, but how you lead. Because what is so palpable in researching you and learning about you is that you are somebody who leads and allows people to be themselves and bring their skill set. And so then you have a very strong team that you can
Yeah.
trust.
Well, I think
Do it.
that probably had something to do with growing up in Hollywood, because there was
Yeah.
always some star coming into the house, or some, wow, that's, Charlton Heston.
Yeah.
But no, to me it was, "Hi, Uncle Chuck, how
Yeah.
are you doing?"
Right.
Everybody was just a person. I mean, they were some neat, some not so neat. I had more relatives in the business. My uncle was Anthony Quinn, and he was a lot of fun. I mean, when Uncle Tony came over, it was whatever character he was in, kind of was still there at Christmas time.
Right. It's a
Yeah.
very unique perspective and unique experience that you have. Thinking what an amazing kind of thing that you did, which was to bring celebrity, right, and show business, and the showy part of show business to the racetrack, which is a great marriage right
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
right? And so, and did you do that instinctually, or were you like, okay, this is Bing Crosby that
Yeah.
began it, and you worked with him? Was it something you thought about as a marketing ploy, or just came naturally to you?
Well, it was probably a little of both. I mean, it was, the Delmar racetrack was started in mid-30s by Bing Crosby, and he had a ranch up the road and was looking for something to do, I think, really more than anything. Made a deal with the state of California, who owned the property. You know, this was right during the Depression era and afterwards, and it became a success because in those days, what happened was if you wanted to see a movie star, there was no TV to turn on.
Right.
You could go to the movies and see them there, but
Right.
they weren't real. So where did you do? Well, if you went to Del Mar, they were there all the time. And Bing was a great singer and a good actor, but he was also a really good PR guy, and
Yeah.
he knew how to sell this thing.
And I read this morning, actually, that Bing Crosby was a kind of a renegade guy. Like, he was outside of the Hollywood system. And I thought, well, how did he manage to do that? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just sort of curious, what about him?
Well, he was, I think, what they probably called him those days, a sportsman, you know, and I loved to play golf and do that kind of stuff. I was surprised in reading the history of Del Mar, how much influence he had, of course. But, you know, inviting all those stars down put it on the map. It really did. I mean, they wouldn't start the first race in those days until the train from LA came down to the
Sure.
station. And so he would invite all the stars, you know, the Robert Taylor's.
I heard Cary Grant and Randolph Scott.
All those guys.
So
were
you've
there.
met them.
Oh yeah, Cary Grant was the nicest guy in the world.
But also, I think it's the hospitality part of it, making sure that the people's experience, that you really are aware of every turn and every experience that they may have. And I think that's probably a big reason for your success there, as well as how you manage.
Del Mar is successful not because of me, but because of the people that work there. And I am so grateful to them, and every day they know how grateful I am to them. And so there's no conflicts, you know. There's just, let's find a way to make this better.
But I hope that I invite you to recognize that that comes from you, because you are their you are their leader, right?
Yeah, I
it comes
think,
from the top.
You have to lead from a position that doesn't say leader. It just says,
Right,
you know,
right.
the respect that I have in you, and I'm not going to tell you what to do because you know what to do, and it's you know.
But a person who is an employee feels that level of respect, and that you have confidence in who they are and how they do what they do, that you can't put a price on that.
No, it's I think it's the reason we're successful. It's just that I've left people alone.
Yeah. So you stepped in as the general manager in 2018,
Yeah, a few years
19?
ago, and I was started out as the general manager and
Yeah.
assistant to something, and finally ended up as president and general manager and CEO. And I loved it. Every day, I've never went to work on a bad day. It was always, I just love the people.
And how
I
long
loved it.
does the season last? And then I was wanting to know also, like, what a day in the life of Joe Harper looks like when you're at the track.
Yeah, when you're actually up and running, it's pretty easy. My day is going around shaking hands and saying hi and thanking the employees for doing a great job. And it's the love of my life next to Barbara and the kids and the grandkids. You know, it came out of the motion picture business. I came out of the motion picture business. We had kind of parallel careers there.
Right.
I love the fact that, you know, I could, you know, have lunch with Bing Crosby's once and his kids and Pat O'Brien's grandsons would come out every year for the Pat O'Brien Steaks, and we get our fair share of celebrities over the years. And you know, so that Hollywood connection is still strong.
There's a story. I know Victor Mature lived in
Samson,
Del Mar,
Island.
right?
He was Samson. Yeah.
Right.
And I remember grandfather, he looked at Kirk Douglas and he decided not to go with Kirk, and he picked Victor Mature. And I remember my mother saying, Victor Mature? He said, I like Kirk Douglas, but he's a little too pink. And I kept thinking, well, put makeup on him. Well, this was in the middle of the communist thing, you know, and a lot of these actors were getting falsely accused of communist ties. And Kirk was kind of on the borderline, and grandfather liked him and knew that there was nothing wrong with him at all that way.
Right.
But he was afraid the publicity
Yep.
could hurt the picture.
Right.
And so Vic got the job. I guess I can tell this story now.
Yes.
They're all dead. So,
I would say so.
So Frank Westmore was the makeup guy, and Frank was a great friend, and he did all CB's pictures for years. And the Westmore family in makeup was, you know, the best.
Premier family.
And Frank was a good friend. Much years later, after the movie was shot and stuff, and we got talking about different movies, and I said, Victor Mature, did you work on another picture with him? He said, I never had met him until he was cast in Samson. And he said, and he kind of looked around, he said, I'll tell you a story. He said, I called Vic, and I needed to see him. I needed to see what Samson could look like with that face. And so it was an important meeting. I'd never met him before. I knocked on the door, and Victor Mature opened the door, stark naked, with an erection.
Okay.
Yeah, okay? Picture that.
Must I?
And Frank goes, I'll see you later. You know? He said, no,
I'll be
come
right
on
back.
in. I'm just playing baseball.
Oh my God.
So Frank, he said, I went in, and there were 4 equally attired women.
Wow.
And one was pitcher, had a little softball, and
Are you kidding me?
yeah. And I said, my God, Frank, what did you do? He said, I got in the game.
Is what I did.
Yeah. No, I every time I saw Victor Mature after that, because he lived down in Rancho Santa Fe, where we were with Delmar is, every time I saw him, I just wanted to say, how's the game going?
Batter up,
for you?
batter up.
Batter up, yeah. Oh, well.
I appreciate those stories.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Hope your audience will, yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. It sounds like you were on horses from very, very young. Is that your mom?
Mother took a great interest in horses at a very, very early age. She was a professional, actually, rider. In those days, a lot of horse shows, and they had, I think she rode for Carnation Company and won a lot of, you know, we had silver trays, you know, stacked up everywhere with her name on it. And she just loved horses, and when she stopped riding, she bred horses until we had a ranch not too far out on the unfashionable side of the San Fernando Valley. And bred thoroughbreds for the track. And
so you had a lot of time with her, because she sounds like a busy woman. But did you have a lot of alone time with her?
I did. She was hard to understand because she came off as like very strong and could be cold, but she was a very passionate woman about her horses, and I guess maybe the horses were something we had in common. So that was kind of fun, but it was always
so you
around
bonded with your mom
always
that
around
way.
the racetrack,
Yeah.
and she was always there almost every day. So she wasn't influencing me, but the genes were there.
Yeah.
And I think both from the motion picture side and the horse side. So it made me very comfortable with either one. Yeah.
I was thinking about what it must have been like to be from a family legacy like that. Did you feel any responsibility to that, or did you feel that you had pressure around having to deliver in a certain way?
I didn't feel the pressure. I felt probably that I should do as best I could. You know, there was never any pressure put on me, I should say, but you know, you kind of feel it. You know, I mean, you're sitting at dinner with the most successful guy in the motion picture business. You know, a very successful woman, a family that's, you know, all doing well. And so I think you get the message early in life.
Yeah.
So when I went to work, my first job was on the Greatest Show on Earth as an extra.
But you were in the Ten Commandments as well, right?
Yeah, that was a few years later. It was the Ten Commandments. Well, the Ten Commandments was interesting because I was about 11 years old. Looking at those pictures now, it looked like an Irish paper boy with a bad wig, you know. And I remember the scene with Edward G. Robinson where he says, "Where's your God now, Moses?" The Billy Crystal line.
Oh, so you're in that scene?
I was standing right next to him at the first 2 takes. Then the third take, grandfather said, "Move back a little bit." So I moved back a little bit. Now I'm pretty sure I know where the camera is. And by the time he finished telling me to move back, I was in Pomona. You know, I mean, it's just absolutely out. And when I saw the production still of he and I, he had his hand on my shoulder, and I always said, no, he was saying, don't come anywhere near a camera again.
Right.
Yeah. So, but the Greatest Show on Earth was a lot of fun. I mean, when Dad said, we got to take you out of school, I said, why? He said, to travel with the circus. I said, I could handle this. Okay.
Sounds like an exciting life.
So I was in the train wreck sequence, which Steven Spielberg said that's what got him interested in making movies. Was that one?
Incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for its time, it was something.
Did you get the acting bug, or?
Here's the deal. Grandfather actually found some wrecked Barnum and Bailey's circus Pullman cars and brought them to the Paramount and put them in the big lot there, the big sound stage, and with fire and steam and everything else. And there's a scene in there where Charlton Heston, who plays Brad, the circus guy, is pinned under the wreckage, you know. Anyway, the scene is very complicated. So I get back in there, and I'm waiting for my cue, and all of a sudden I turn around, and there's two green eyes looking at me. It's the Panther. He's waiting for his cue. And the trainer has a hold of it tightly. And he said, you know, kid, the trouble with Panthers is you can't train them. So then action, you know, I come out, I trip, I pick up, I look up, I see the Panther, take off running, and cut, you know, okay. So we did it 12 takes. And the Panther figured out where I was going about the fourth take. And figured, I just go to that mark over there and I'll wait for that little son of a bitch and eat him, you know. So, but I remember the next day, grandfather said, come on, we'll look at the rushes and see how you did. So I go in the production room at Paramount, sit down and watch all 12 takes.
On a big screen?
On a big screen, yeah. And I'm going, you know, I think I look pretty good.
Yeah.
I might have a career in this thing, you know.
Amazing.
And so it was the last take, and the lights come up, and he said, you were very good. I said, well, thank you, Grandpa. He said, can't use it. Huh? He said, no, it's too scary. This was 1954. You couldn't put child endangerment. And
see, my mind is going to, where's that footage?
Yeah, me too. Never should trust it.
It's an interesting thing. Like, I think to myself, like, your grandfather was Cecil B. DeMille. He's the guy who created the whole, like, style of what a director, right? Because he had that flair. He must have been quite a larger-than-life figure.
He was, but he was a great grandfather. I mean, he was very
Tell me
loving,
about that.
and he always made sure that every time we were together, especially alone, or we're out on the lawn looking at the stars, he would tell me about the different constellations. He was always
beautiful.
teaching me something, you know, all the time. It didn't dawn on me until after he died that why I knew all this stuff. It was because he...
So when he was with his family, he was with his family.
He was with the family, yeah.
That's
He was just a neat guy. I mean, every day he came back from the studio, I'd run up and give him a hug and a kiss, and we'd talk about the day or whatever have you.
What was it like to sit in your granddad's screening room? Was that like an every Sunday thing? It was something that you...
Well, he ran a picture every night at his home.
Every night?
Yeah, every night except Sunday. And the house, it was actually two houses. Grandfather was living in one when he first bought it, and there was another house across the way, and he bought that. It was Charlie Chaplin's
house, yeah.
And they connected it with this, you know, corridor. And so we had, like, hey, 30,000 square feet. Gee, where do I go next? You know, it was fun growing up there.
Right.
And that housed a lot of his memorabilia in that. And it had a big screening room in there and two 35mm projectors. And
people would be invited over, and if nobody was in there, was the movie running kind of thing? It was just like clockwork?
There was always somebody in there. I mean, grandfather ran a picture every night. Usually, a lot of them were not released yet. He wanted to see, you know, how the competition was doing, I guess.
Right.
Saturdays, Disney, he and Walt were pretty good friends, and he'd send over his latest cartoon or a latest movie that he'd done. So that was kind of kiddie nights there. So sometimes I had to sneak in the back doors to watch them because there were some pictures that then weren't really ready for
a young person. Yeah. So what was your grandfather like when he was working?
Well, obviously, very focused. Very sure of himself. He surrounded himself with really good people.
And most of them were the same people.
Yeah, most of them were the same people, you know. And
again, longevity.
Yeah, longevity, and they were devoted to him, and he was devoted to them. And I think that gave him great comfort. And I mean, nothing's more emotionally, you know, involved than when you start shooting some of this stuff where you've got one shot and one camera, two cameras, so you're not sure everything's working. But he had great technical people, you know. And same cinema photographer over the years. So
it was like a Swiss watch after a while. They worked well together.
They absolutely did. Same sound guy. I remember Lindy, the sound guy. If I was on the set, he'd always let me ring the bell, you know, to close the set and all that kind of stuff. But they benefited even after he died, you know.
So he died a year after the Ten Commandments came out.
Yeah.
Was that a shock?
No, he'd had some problems, and this was 57, Yes, and so it had been over for a couple of years.
I heard, and I'm not sure where I heard this, that people who worked on the film are still being paid.
Yeah, so when after the Ten Commandments was released and it obviously started making pretty good money, there was probably, I'm thinking about 40 or so people, maybe more, that they would get a percentage of the picture. And this went on for a long time. Helen Cohen, who's sitting over there running our office and my life, she would always say, well, we're getting down to the last 10, you know.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, not that long ago, there was one guy left, you know.
Wow.
I think he was 100 years old, but I mean, yeah.
But how extraordinary.
Yeah, well, no, his crew, he was very loyal, and they were very loyal to him.
Well, what do you think about Hollywood now? Because I know that's a very broad question, but I was thinking how back in the day there was so much mystique because you didn't see stars,
Yeah.
right? You saw them on the screen, and if you happen to catch a glimpse, that's over because anybody can pick up a phone and see their favorite star, you know, brushing
Yeah.
their teeth basically, or what they're eating. And I just wondered what you think about Hollywood now.
Well, I think the magic is still there, you know, and we see people still bigger than life, and all of a sudden, you know, you go to the Oscars and there they are. You
Yeah.
know? And yeah, obviously in those early days, you couldn't see them anywhere except on the big screen, or maybe Delmar if you can. Hey.
Right, right.
So but it's a different world.
Yeah.
It's, you know, I mean, it's the same business. You still got the cameras rolling and the,
Yep.
you know, now
Yep.
there's no such thing as film anymore. So
Yeah.
I remember
Right.
like, well, the Ten Commandments. Okay, we're in Egypt. We're filming all this, the Exodus scenes, thousands of extras.
Remember this day.
And the day's shooting is over. Maybe 4 or 5 cameras, different angles, different things. It's very complicated. There's no CGI in those days. And
Let me just say this. The Ten Commandments was the first time the world got to see Egypt.
Stone will break.
There are 2,000 slaves on the ropes.
The Egyptian civilization and the way your granddad went to such lengths to create the props, to create the sets, to create the costumes, like gold inlaid chariots. I mean, the detail in that movie is just astonishing.
Yeah,
to think that there was no special effects really except for the Red Sea parting.
yeah, the Red Sea, yeah, that was Jello or something. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I remember they learned a lot from the hieroglyphics down in the tombs and
Right,
things like that. I
right.
remember going down to Luxor when they were shooting down there and going through all those tombs and things. And I went with a guy named Henry Nordlinger, who was responsible for making sure everything was accurate in those areas. And they were looking for a physician, hieroglyphic of a man doctoring another person. And they went every tomb all the time. I was going up and down stairs and getting claustrophobia
Wow.
4 times a day. We found it, Mr. Nordlinger, come here. We all ran running down the stairs. And there was a man, a doctor, taking care of a man's penis. We can't put that in the movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the Egyptians were overly,
Yeah.
I mean, not overly, they were incredibly sexual, and there was a lot of Egyptian art that nobody's ever seen.
Yeah.
And
They
they
didn't
put
make
that
it in the
aside.
movie. I can tell you that.
You're right,
Not
exactly.
1954. Or whatever. Yeah, he was a stickler for authenticity. He really was. I mean, there's a scene in Ten Commandments where they're playing a game with the
We
pharaoh.
love that with the jackals.
Yeah.
There.
Oh,
My jackals have your hounds at bay.
dogs at bay are dangerous.
And that was an actual game that they played. I mean,
I love that.
you know, people went into the museums and everything
Uh-huh.
else to find those things. So
Memnet.
then that, yeah.
I know everything about that movie. Every single character, every single scene. So the Architectural Digest talked about the fact that Cecil B. DeMille really lived with
Yeah.
his props.
Growing up in that house, there were nothing but props everywhere. I mean, but they were authentic.
They were made well. They
Yeah,
weren't
made
like,
well.
Right.
Yeah. He did collect a lot of memorabilia that way.
Where is that now?
It's well, good you mentioned that. It's actually in a lot of different storage areas.
Yeah, you don't have to tell me where that
Medically
is. But
sealed and stuff like that. Yeah, I think it's
Amazing.
time that probably you'll be seeing soon that, you know,
Oh.
I always say art is not art if it's locked in the basement. You
absolutely.
know, art is art if it's on the wall, and people
Yes.
can see it. And over the years, we've given some away to different places and museums and things that would show it off and see it. You know, I'd like to see that stuff come out of the vault.
I would too,
Yeah.
and I'm sure a lot of people would. I mean, it's an interesting thing. Like I'm talking a lot about the Ten Commandments because I was affected so greatly by it. You know, there's Ten Commandments fan groups and social media groups, and this would be very interesting, and certainly would be great to be able to know when those things are coming out, and people
Yeah.
would really be interested in that. As I'm sitting here, I'm like, you know, one can say, you know, you come from the DeMille family and your relationship with your grandfather and all of that. But when I met you at the Oscars, I was so intrigued. And I thought, what an interesting life you've had because of where you were born and what family you were born into.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that legacy follows you wherever you go. So my big sweeping question to you, who is Joe Harper?
Yeah. Well, it's sometimes a hard question to answer. Yeah. I think most people that know me well say he's a nice guy. You know, I'll take that. Yeah. But deep down, is struggling with intelligence. You know, trying to come up with the right ideas. Am I smart enough to do this job? And I guess that's always, probably all of us have that insecurity a little bit when we're stuck with something to do or say. So I've learned just to wing it and make up a story here or there, but whatever
And act
sounds
like you know what you're doing.
Yeah. I agree. I think, yeah, no matter how many times you do something along the same lines,
Right.
but can I do it better than I did before? You know, was I bad? Where did I mess up? Let me look at that, you know.
Yeah. Joe, do you, are there things that you still want to do that is not, that you're not doing currently? Things on your bucket list or creative things that you still wish to?
It's hard. I mean, because I did so many years of film working in the track there, you know, I'd have an idea and somebody else would say, let's do this with it, you know.
Yeah.
And so I miss those kind of days because you really don't have to be too creative to shake hands, you know, and stand up there at the turnstiles and welcome them in. So I miss it, but I don't know. You know, I think of a book. I think I've written a few chapters, some of which we've talked about here
We've
today.
talked about, that's
and,
right.
You know, there's probably another side, not a dark side, but a little more emotional attachment to my life that I'd probably like to get out there.
There's a sense of longevity, but not in the way, not longevity, but just staying the course and having it like, you come from an idea family,
Yeah.
but making that idea however long it takes. That's rare, especially in our world today. And that makes me, in a way, emotional. It's meaningful. It brings meaningfulness to life, to have an idea. It's like birthing a child
Yeah.
and then raising the child. And then at a certain point, you know,
Yeah.
you have to let it go, you know? Think
They
about
don't
that.
let go, though.
No, they never will let go. No, as they shouldn't. But that's a beautiful thread, golden thread in your family legacy around that. And then sort of makes me think about what legacy, you know, do you wish to leave?
You know, I'm in the business of the people business, and I've always strived to make people happy and like me, and so I've done a fairly good job of that. And I don't know. It's just sometimes I look at myself in the mirror and think, this is kind of a phony deal. You know, am I being true to myself, or why don't I be a jerk some days just to get it out of me?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. But I just am very comfortable with my life. And
That's beautiful.
yeah, I mean, it's not a lot of people are, you know. I think that,
Right.
you know, I never get up in the morning and say, God, I wish I'd have done that, you know.
Well, think about that for a second. That's why people get such an overflow off of you of good vibes. You know, you radiate. It comes from humility, and it comes from you looking in the mirror and going, you know,
Yeah.
getting real with yourself.
Yeah,
Like, why do I do that? And do I do it out of a real desire to do that, or I do it out of wanting to be liked or loved or people pleased? So I think that's a very honest thing to do, to look at yourself.
I think so. I think, you know, for the better part of my life, hanging around the motion picture business, we see people being somebody else. And that kind of rubs off on you. Like, am I really being somebody else? I mean...
Oh my gosh, that's so good, Joe.
Yeah.
That's really good.
So I guess I've always sort of had this little struggle going on. Are you Joe Harper? What Joe Harper are you? You know, are you the dad, the father, the grandfather now that loves his kids and family? And am I still somewhere being an actor? Even if it's just pretending.
Even if it's good.
Pretending to meet people,
Yeah.
It's good, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think
That's great, though. That's great that you have that kind of self-honesty, and I think the fact that you have that self-honesty means that you actually are, you know, through and through, you know, genuinely good and happy and grateful for your life. I mean, that's a good life.
Those are easy things to live with too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't want to be thinking about, oh my God, what did I do wrong? Or I'd never do that again. There's a few of those, but they're not that bad. Yeah.
Right. Such an interesting family you come from. And I think about also the fact that you're a real Californian, which is, you're rare birds.
Yeah.
You know, and what this town must have, I mean, what it looked like not that long ago. And, you know, and that there was really, Hollywood wasn't even here until, you know, your grandfather established it.
Yeah, he was coming out from the East just because when film came out, and Edison invented the camera, but it was a very, what they call slow film. You had to put a lot of light on it to get it. So the only place you had light was sunlight. There was no electric lights, you know, when you think about it.
Right.
So he got on a train and came out west. And I think he stopped somewhere in Arizona, and it was raining, so he got back on the story. But he did. He rented a barn in what is now Hollywood.
You rented a barn, what is now Hollywood.
Yeah. Well, it was Hollywood land up there on the hillside.
Right.
And he made the first movie in Hollywood.
So we've done a lot of talking about your mom and all of the women in your life and your granddad. I'm interested to know about your dad.
My
what
dad
he
was
was
a great
like.
guy, yeah.
This is a very nice thing. Your face lights up. Not that many people can have their face light up with both mother and father.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's what a joy. What
Dad
a joy.
was he was a product of the business. His mother was an actress, and they lived in New York. And he always said, you know, you're born in a trunk. Dad was actually born in a trunk and backstage, and so he had that background, you know, all the time. He was an interesting guy. He worked for grandfather, and he was the fix-it guy. If somebody had a problem, if there was an emotional issue with an actress or an actor or something, Dad went and solved it. He did the same thing in World War II. He was a pilot prior to the war, so he had that flying ability. And World War II came along, and he tried to join the Marines at 39 and there, whatever it was, and they said, you know, spun him around and said, get loose. But a general in the Army Air Corps hired him, made him a colonel, or a captain then, and he became the general's dog robber. A dog robber is, all generals have one, at least then. Was the kind of guy that if something needed to be dark,
whatever it was,
no paperwork.
Right.
That was my father did, and he was good at it. And if meant getting airplanes into the Pacific without going through all the paperwork, he did that. And then when war ended, he went to work then for grandfather.
They don't make them like that anymore.
No. But he was just a nice guy. I mean, he was, like I said, when he fell down and skinned your knee, you went to Dad. He was the one that gave you the hug. And, So, and he was a great guy. We loved to go fishing together. He was a man's man. He just, you know, he rode horses too. And he was a super guy.
You're like Hollywood pedigree. You're a treasure trove, Joe. Honestly.
An old treasure trove, yeah.
Well,
I mean, there's not many of us around that kind of had
share the stories.
Life, you know, You know, I mean, obviously, I've always said that I was a member of the Hollywood division of the Lucky Sperm Club, and I've always been thankful for what those genes brought out.
You,
yeah,
right?
And because, you know.
And you passed it on to your beautiful family.
Yeah, the family, I got lucky there.
Yeah.
I married
I would say
Asian woman.
so.
Yeah,
I would say so based on what I saw.
yeah. Life's experiences were amazing for me and interesting. Some of them were scary. I mean,
What was scary?
Well, I'll tell you one story in Egypt, because Egypt to me was just an emotional sleigh ride. We were there when the British pulled out of the Sudan. And the Egyptians have a lot of Sudanese in there. And they were rejoicing in the street. At the time, that day, we were down in the old part of Cairo, down the dirt streets, narrow alleyways. And we were leaving, going down this narrow thing, and a mob came down the other way. And they looked in and saw, to them, a bunch of British guys.
Right.
So they were going to get even. And so the mob started banging on the car. I remember it hit my elbow before I could get my window up. And Mahmoud, the driver, was trying to explain that we were Americans, but they didn't buy it. So they started to turn the car over.
That's so scary.
It was scary. My dad and mom were in the back seat. I was sitting up front with Mahmoud, and the car was just about to tip over. And I remember my dad saying, "Mahmoud, anytime you want to get us out of here." And he said, "I'm waiting for all 4 tires to be on the ground." Wow. When all 4 tires were on the ground, I'm in the front seat, and there are 20, 30 people in front of me. Mahmoud hit the gas.
Very frightening.
And just all of them went under the car.
Oh, wow.
You know.
Wow.
And I'm sitting there with my mouth open, thinking, how many people did we just kill?
Yeah.
And it was a very quiet ride back to the apartment.
I mean, that's such a
Yeah, I see that.
profound story.
I see all those people.
Yeah.
You know, about once every 2 months they come to visit.
I don't think any human being, you know, doesn't impact.
Yeah.
However they process it or don't process it is whatever. But it's.
Yeah, but it's, you know, I just chalked
But
it
so
up.
Egypt was a lot of different things.
Egypt was
for
a lot
you.
of different things. Yeah, it really was. I mean, it was riding a horse at night with a big moon over the sand dunes and coming to a tent with a belly dancer in it. I mean, you know, things like that. And just,
What a life.
Being
What a life.
being in a chariot with Heston's first chariot ride
Yeah, I wanted
ever.
to ask you because you showed me at the Oscars.
Yeah.
We were
Yeah,
after the Oscars.
He
You
was
showed me.
just about to
Yeah.
do Ben-Hur, and he'd never been in a chariot before. And there's a part in the Ten Commandments, the opening scene, where he's driving a chariot.
Right.
So he had to learn. So Abbas, the guy that took care of all the horses and ended up marrying my sister, a great guy.
Wait, what?
Abbas Kamel El Bodadli was the man. He was an Egyptian cavalry officer, the best-looking guy you ever saw in your life. In fact, he met the ship when we docked at Alexandria. And I remember my mother said, "Wow, look at him."
Uh-huh.
And my sister goes, "I saw him first." He just was this really good-looking and a neat guy. I loved him, absolutely adored him. And I mean, he had guns and horses and everything.
Right.
And but he was a guy that taught all his men to drive chariots. And so Abbas said, "I'm going to teach Chuck to drive. You want to come along with us?" I said, "Sure." So I hopped in. Heston was there, and I'm hanging on for dear life. And Heston is learning how to drive a chariot.
That's great. That's
Yeah,
so awesome.
So it was cool. Yeah, it was very cool. Later in life, I go, "Oh wow, that was first time." Yeah.
Well, Charlton Heston was like my, you know, as a little girl, he was like what I thought the ideal man.
Really a nice guy.
Yeah, really nice, huh? What was it also like to be involved in a film that used that many extras and the coordination of that? And I'm very curious about where the extras came from. Were the extras from this country or were they
in
local?
Egypt, when all the stuff on location in Cairo, it actually was amazing choreography of getting all those people there. But as we left Cairo to drive to that location, you went along the Delta region of the Nile. And the people that were living there in 1954 looked just like the people that were working there during Ramesses' time. The outfits were not much different. And so the wardrobe people, all they needed to do was say, "No, you're fine, take off the shoes, put on the sandals, and here, put this sash on to give it color." So they were red, greens, and blues all out there, and yellows in the big crowd scene. Otherwise, they were all Egyptians, you know, and they loved it.
I love it.
I just consider myself the luckiest guy in the
You
world.
are. You're a wonderful man and a really interesting person to interview and converse with.
I'll tell you, and you're the best interviewer I've ever had. You know, it was so much fun being with you at the Oscars, and we did a couple other things together too.
We
and
did, yeah.
They were fun with all the industry type things.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's always fun to go to the Oscars. And,
Oh my gosh. I
but-
mean, what a gift. What a real gift.
Yeah.
And it was really wonderful to be there with your family. And also, it seems like your family has like a permanent, a permanent table and a permanent seats there. How many years has that been
Well,
going on?
I think it's really nice to the Academy, and I thank them on camera.
Well,
and-
they kind of owe it. I know.
He and his brother founded the Academy,
That's what I'm saying.
so it's very nice of them
Yeah.
to still recognize the DeMille name. And
It's beautiful. So to that point, I really appreciate not only going, but going with you and your family. So I want to say thank you.
the most fun night I've
So
ever had
fun.
at the Oscars.
Well, the Sprinter van was the fun part.
yeah, yeah.
On the way back. And then this last year on the way there, that was actually the first time I got super scared when...
That was scary,
It
yeah.
was scary because I didn't know whether they were going to start jumping on the Sprinter
Yeah,
van.
well,
That's what it felt like.
We were a block and a half away from getting out of the limo, and there were the Palestinian,
Yeah.
and they had flags going, and right up side of us came like 20 cop cars,
Yeah,
and guys
I mean,
getting
it was
out
just-
with helmets.
Well,
and-
we were wondering why it was taking so long. Normally the Sprinter vans, they edge
Yeah.
up and they edge up consistently. And
They
that
stopped
just,
everything.
They
yeah.
stopped everything. And
Remember
that
Mark
was,
Ruffalo was in.
Mark Ruffalo
he
was
was
like,
he was right in front of him. He got stuck, but apparently he had something to do there.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the show. So he started up and he looked up there and he went, "No, I don't think
I
so."
don't think so. That was one way to enter the Oscars.
Yeah, that was.
We got
something
there just in time.
We
and
did,
then
yeah.
we got whisked in.
just in time.
Yeah, it was awesome. Thank
fun.
you. Thank you, Joe Harper.
Thank
you
you,
for
Dave.
you.
Love
Thank
it.
you for your beautiful stories, your beautiful family, your contribution to Hollywood, just to all of the audiences and all of the culture that Hollywood has affected. I mean, you have a piece in that. So
Little piece.
I thank you for that. Yeah, a little piece.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.